I always thought weddings showed the best in families. I used to watch my cousins' weddings and imagine the hugs, the laughter, the happy chaos of relatives crowding around, crying, smiling, and passing the cake. I imagined my own wedding the same way. Warm, calm, maybe imperfect, but full of love. But life has a way of humbling you. The day before my wedding started quietly enough. I had just flown home from Virginia after finishing my latest stretch on base. Nothing dramatic, just training evaluations, paperwork, and long days in the sun. But I was done. My leave was approved, my fiancée already in town, and for a moment, it looked like a perfect hometown scene. Sunshine spilling over the old white steeple church, neighbors trimming their hedges, kids running through sprinklers, and my parents. Calm if distant, or so I thought. By late afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen table, going through last-minute details with my mom. She kept her eyes glued to her list, barely glancing at me while my dad came in and out, muttering under his breath whenever he passed by. My brother Kyle scrolled on his phone like he always did, craving attention without effort. The air was thick with quiet tension, like a storm waiting to break. I should have known that evening. I went to check on my wedding outfit. My heart sank. The suit I had chosen with care, a sleek navy ensemble meant to honor both the ceremony and my military background. It had been cut, ripped down the middle, unwearable. I stared at it in disbelief, unable to process the betrayal. "Leo," my sister shouted from the hallway, her voice both horrified and mischievous. "Look at him. He's in navy whites." I turned just in time to see her point. And there I stood, fully dressed in my pristine navy uniform, 2 shining stars on my shoulders, my posture sharp, my presence commanding. What my parents thought would humiliate me had done the exact opposite. Suddenly the room felt smaller, my authority larger, and the tension utterly reversed. They had underestimated me, and for the first time in years I felt seen, respected, untouchable. Before I continue, tell, from which place are you watching this story right now? Please subscribe and like the video for motivation. The morning of the wedding. I woke early to the muted hum of the house. Sunlight spilled across the room in golden streaks, but my mind wasn't on the warmth or the beauty outside. It was on the previous night's betrayal. My parents had thought cutting my wedding suit would shame me. Instead, I felt ready, focused, determined. By the time I stepped into the living room, my sister was already grinning, whispering to a cousin about how he's about to shock everyone. I barely had to glance at her to know she meant my parents. Kyle, my brother, was slouched in the corner, phone in hand, pretending not to notice, but his eyes kept flicking toward me. I took a deep breath and walked toward the mirror. There I was, pristine navy whites perfectly pressed, 2 stars gleaming on my shoulders. The suit I had planned to wear for the ceremony now symbolized something entirely different: strength, authority, and the exact respect my parents had tried to deny me. When the time came to leave for the church, my parents followed, their expressions tightly controlled. I could feel the tension radiating off them in waves. My mom's lips were pursed so tightly I thought she might burst, and my dad's jaw was set as if he were trying to contain a storm. Kyle looked half amused, half annoyed, as if my presence in the uniform reminded him he had no control over the day. Walking into the church, heads turned immediately. Guests whispered, eyes wide. It wasn't just the uniform, it was the confidence I carried in it. My sister nudged me and whispered, "See? I told you. This is way better than any suit they could have cut." The ceremony began, and for the first time in years, I felt fully in control of my own story. My parents sat stiffly, shoulders tight, but the room responded to me differently than I had imagined. I wasn't just the groom. They saw someone transformed, someone dignified, someone impossible to undermine. When it was time for vows, I didn't just speak promises to David. I spoke them with the weight of authority, of experience, of a life shaped by discipline and dedication. I could see the surprise flicker in my parents' eyes, the look of "we didn't expect this" that said more than words ever could. My sister leaned over and whispered again, grinning, "Best wedding ever. Leo, they can't touch you now." By the end of the ceremony, I realized something vital. The wedding wasn't about my parents' approval. It wasn't even about their sabotage. It was about claiming my own moment on my own terms, and letting the people who mattered, my friends, My partner, my fellow service members, see, me for who I truly was. The church air felt electric. Every whisper seemed louder, every gaze sharper. Guests had never seen me like this before. Leo, the calm, steady son, now transformed into a figure that commanded attention with every step. My parents sat at the front stiff as statues, trying to mask the shock on their faces. My mom's fingers twitched nervously on her program. My dad's eyes flicked around as though searching for a loophole to regain control, but there was none. When I reached the altar, David's eyes met mine. Relief, love, and something else, a spark of pride shone there. He didn't care about the drama with my parents. He cared about the man standing in front of him, and that alone was grounding. And then it happened. My sister, unable to contain her excitement, leaned over to one of the guests nearby and shouted loud enough for the front row to hear, "Look at him. He's in navy whites with 2 stars." The effect was immediate. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. My parents' faces drained of color. They had thought cutting my suit would embarrass me, but now it had amplified my presence tenfold. I could feel every eye in the room, every heartbeat syncing with mine. During the vows, I spoke with clarity and authority, my words carrying the weight of someone who had fought battles both abroad and at home. I promised loyalty, love, and a life built on respect, not just between David and me, but in the silent declaration to my parents, I cannot be controlled or diminished by anyone, not even you. As I finished, I glanced at my parents. My mom blinked rapidly, clearly trying to maintain composure, while my dad's jaw tightened as if trying to chew through a brick wall. My sister, meanwhile, had a victorious grin on her face, practically vibrating with excitement. "Finally," she whispered to me. "They're actually seeing you now." The ceremony continued, but every gesture, the exchange of rings, the first kiss carried a deeper meaning. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a declaration of independence, a symbolic reclaiming of a moment my parents tried to sabotage. Every cheer from the guests felt like validation, every clap like armor against the humiliation my parents had hoped to impose. And yet, the story didn't end at the altar. The real drama was about to unfold during the reception. When words would be exchanged, eyes would lock, and the family's reactions would spill over. For now, though, I stood tall, proud, and untouchable. The Navy uniform, the 2 stars, the authority it represented. It had transformed a day that could have been ruined into a personal triumph. The reception hall was buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music, but for me, every step across the polished floor felt like walking into a battlefield. I had already won. My Navy uniform gleamed under the chandelier lights, the 2 stars on my shoulders catching every reflection. Every eye in the room seemed to linger on me, drawn to a presence that radiated authority, confidence, and unshakable pride. Guests whispered among themselves, many leaning toward my sister with sly smiles. "He looks incredible," they murmured. "And in uniform, wow." My sister, clearly thrilled by the chaos my parents had accidentally created, winked at me. "This is better than anything I could have imagined," she whispered, and then I saw them. My parents standing stiffly near the edge of the room, watching. Their eyes flicked nervously toward me every few seconds. Their lips pressed tight, the color draining from their faces in slow, silent waves. My mom's fingers twisted the napkin in her hands. My dad's fist clenched and unclenched, as if trying to grasp control from the air itself. They tried to speak, of course. The words were sharp at first, subtle digs hidden in polite phrasing. "Leo, I suppose you think you're making a statement with that uniform?" my dad said, voice tight. We just wanted to help, to guide you." I let my eyes meet his, calm but unyielding. "You cut my suit last night," I said, my tone measured. "You tried to humiliate me. Today I show you respect, my way, my choice, and I'm proud of who I am." The room went silent. Guests leaned in slightly, sensing the confrontation, waiting for the next move. My sister, ever the instigator of justice, whispered loud enough for my parents to hear. "See, this is why Leo can't be controlled. You tried to break him, and instead, you made him shine." My parents' attempts to argue fell flat against the presence I carried in that moment. Every gesture, every word I spoke radiated the authority of my uniform, the dignity earned through years of discipline, service, and hard choices. The very thing they had tried to destroy had become my armor. By the time dinner was served, It was clear to everyone who held the power in that room. Conversations shifted. Friends and family leaned toward me, sharing congratulations not just for the wedding, but for the strength they could see radiating from me. I caught glimpses of approval, nods of respect, and in that moment, I realized something profound. I didn't need my parents' blessing to command this day. I had already earned it through my actions, my presence and my resolve, and through it all, my sister's laughter echoed softly behind me, a private victory shared between siblings. She had been my secret ally all along, the one who had understood the storm brewing long before I could name it. "Best day ever," she whispered again, this time with satisfaction. And you didn't even have to lift a finger. They did it to themselves. The reception carried on. But the energy in the room had shifted. Where there had once been polite murmurs and anxious glances, now there was admiration, laughter, and warmth directed squarely at me and David. Friends and extended family came over, congratulating not only the marriage but also the confidence and authority I radiated in my navy whites. Every handshake, every smile, every nod felt like a reinforcement of something I had quietly yearned for. Recognition on my own terms. Even my parents couldn't escape the reality of the day. My mom kept sneaking glances at me over her glass, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her hand. My dad, usually so commanding, found himself constrained by the sheer presence of my uniform, unable to assert the authority he thought he still held over me. Every time they tried to speak, the room's attention seemed to lean in naturally toward me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their attempt to embarrass me had become my stage. My sister, ever the sly orchestrator of justice, found subtle ways to make the point even clearer. She toasted with a mischievous grin, raising her glass high, to Leo, who turned a little sabotage into a show of pride none of us will ever forget. Laughter erupted around the room, and I caught my parents' shocked expressions, almost as if the words themselves stung more than the catsuit ever could. As the night progressed, I danced with David, our steps in perfect harmony, the joy between us palpable. Every time our eyes met, there was unspoken acknowledgement that nothing, not even family sabotage, could touch the foundation we were building together. Each cheer from the crowd felt like validation, a public recognition of what mattered most: love, respect, and personal triumph. Between dances, my sister leaned in again, whispering, "Look around. Everyone here sees you. They see the man you've become. They can't take it away now." And she was right. In that moment, surrounded by friends, family, and colleagues who respected my journey and my accomplishments, the sabotage seemed almost insignificant. It had been an obstacle, yes, but it had also sharpened my resolve, highlighted my presence, and amplified my triumph. By the time the night wound down, I found myself standing near the edge of the hall, watching my parents finally speak quietly to one another. I didn't need to hear the words, they were irrelevant. I had already won. The respect and recognition I had gained, both subtle and overt, could not be taken away. And through it all, my sister's victorious smile reminded me that sometimes allies appear in the most unexpected ways, quietly turning the tide when you need it most. As the night deepened and the last of the toasts echoed through the reception hall, a quiet intensity settled over the room. My parents, who had spent most of the day rigid with disapproval and barely contained frustration, finally approached me. My heart remained steady, my posture sharp, and my gaze unwavering. Every step I had taken through this day had led to this moment, the confrontation I had always known would come, now unavoidable. "Leo," my mother began, her voice soft, almost faltering. She paused, perhaps searching for words that would undo the humiliation of the day, but none came. I watched her closely, and instead of anger or resentment, I detected something else, a reluctant respect. Though buried deep beneath years of distance, my father, usually so unshakable, took a deep breath, trying to assert authority. But the uniform, the 2 stars, the calm control I exuded left him powerless. We didn't realize. The ceremony, his words trailed off. It was clear. They had been outmaneuvered not through confrontation, but through dignity and strength. I didn't need to berate them, raise my voice, or make a scene. I simply stood tall and said, "You tried to humiliate me last night. You cut my suit, but I didn't just survive that. I turned it into a moment of pride for myself, for David, and for everyone." Who's here to celebrate love and respect? The hall seemed to hold its breath. My sister, never one to let a dramatic moment pass, clapped her hands lightly, drawing attention. "Let's give it up for Leo," she shouted, her grin wide and triumphant. "Not only is he the most handsome groom ever, but he also just taught a masterclass in dignity. Way to go!" The room erupted in laughter and applause, the energy shifting once again. I caught the eyes of my parents as they exchanged a glance. Something unspoken passed between them, a subtle acknowledgement, a quiet admission that they had underestimated me. I didn't need more. I had claimed my moment fully. Even my brother Kyle, who had spent the day scrolling and half glancing at my progress, finally approached. "You, look good," he muttered, scratching the back of his neck, a half smile betraying his respect. It wasn't a dramatic acknowledgement, but it was real, and it mattered. And there I stood, in my navy whites, 2 stars gleaming, surrounded by people who recognized not just the groom, but the man behind the uniform, someone who had faced sabotage, familial doubt, and subtle hostility, and emerged triumphant, dignified, and unshakable. My sister nudged me one last time, her eyes sparkling.
"You see?"
"Sometimes it takes a little chaos for the right people to finally notice. Today you didn't just survive, you shone." As the music swelled and the guests resumed dancing, I realized the truth. The day had never been about revenge. It had been about proving to myself and to everyone who mattered that my worth, my presence, and my strength couldn't be diminished by anyone, not even my own family. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, applause, and the subtle awe of those who had witnessed it all, I felt complete. The night had settled into a gentle rhythm. Music swirled softly around the hall. Laughter floated through the air, and the scent of flowers mingled with the faint aroma of the candles still burning on the tables. For a moment I allowed myself to breathe, to take in everything, the people, the celebration, the sheer relief of a day that could have been a disaster but had instead turned into an unforgettable triumph. David took my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "You did it," he whispered, pride and love shining in his eyes. I smiled, squeezing back, knowing that while I had faced sabotage, tension, and doubt all day, the victory wasn't about them. It was about us, about love, partnership, and the life we were beginning together. My sister appeared beside me, still grinning. "You know," she said, "this is one for the history books. Parents tried to cut you down and you walked in shining brighter than ever. And the best part? They couldn't even hide it." She winked, nudging me toward the center of the dance floor. I glanced at my parents. My mother's expression had softened, the lines of disapproval replaced by something closer to understanding. My dad, silent but attentive, gave a small nod, the kind that carried grudging respect. No words were needed. In that simple acknowledgement, I could feel the balance of power had subtly shifted, not with anger, but with presence, dignity, and confidence. Guests cheered as David and I shared our first dance as a married couple. Every step felt symbolic, steps that carried not just joy, but resilience, strength, and quiet defiance against anyone who tried to undermine us. I caught the eyes of those who had whispered doubts earlier in the day. Their smiles said it all. They had witnessed something remarkable. Later, when speeches were over and the last guests were lingering in quiet conversation, my sister raised her glass one final time. "To Leo," she said, voice full of triumph, "who proved today that no one can dim your shine. Not parents, not critics, not anyone. And to love, courage, and navy whites that just can't be beaten." The room erupted, laughter and applause filling every corner. I realized in that moment that the suit my parents had tried to destroy, the one they thought would humiliate me, had become a symbol of everything I had worked for: honor, pride, and self-respect, the uniform, the 2 stars, and the unwavering confidence I had carried through the day weren't just about military service. They were about claiming my own story and refusing to let anyone write it for me. As the night drew to a close, David and I stepped outside under the stars. The air was cool, crisp, and full of possibility. My sister joined us, laughing softly, nudging my arm. "Remember this night," she said, "because no one's ever going to forget it." "And neither will you," I smiled, looking up at the sky. Everything that had happened, the betrayal, the tension, the humiliation that never came, had led to this perfect moment of triumph. I had turned a potential disaster into a story of strength, dignity, and victory. And as I stood there, navy whites gleaming in the moonlight, 2 stars shining proudly on my shoulders, I knew one thing with certainty: this day was mine, fully and completely, and nothing could ever take that away.